G'day from Monza, the Temple of Speed, and I'm standing right in the middle of the driver's car park. Behind me here is Mark Webber's magnificent Porsche Cayenne Turbo. And if you hang around for 8 seconds, I'll tell you what every single F1 driver, plus a few team principals, drove to the track. Shall we get started? Yeah, let's do it. Let's start with the Red Bull drivers, Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. Yes, they were once again in these Ford Mustang MACH-EGTs. This is a fully electric car. It does 0 to 104.4 seconds. It has a 425 kilometre range, and more than 50,000 of these vehicles have been sold in Europe already. Once again, there were a number of these cars being operated by Red Bull, 2 blue and 2 yellow from memory. And did either of the drivers drive these cars? No, they were passengered in and dropped right at the swipe gates. And then there was a very short walk, I'm thinking maybe 35 metres, to the Red Bull hospitality suite. It was one of the shortest walks, although not the shortest. I'll tell you about that coming up shortly. What was the traffic like? Yeah, tricky, especially as you got later in the day, and these Red Bull drivers tend to arrive later in the morning as opposed to, say, a Logan Sargent who's in very early. And on one day, was it race day? Certainly race day, and maybe even Saturday, they were given a police escort. Now, this is the drive into the track. It's through a park, and it's quite glorious. And this particular Daniel fan was there on every single day. And this was probably the best chance to glimpse a driver, unless, of course, you were trying to glimpse Lando Norris. Why? Well, he was in the back row of his car. Row? Yes, row, not seat. He was in a row. He was in this Mercedes VITO Tourer people mover. Lando's party van, perhaps. His trainer was driving the car. His dad was also in attendance, but he came in separately. Next up, Nico Hülkenberg in this BMW X4. And where did Nico and a good number of drivers get their cars from for this and other races? Well, they go through a company called F42travel.co.uk. This crew handles ground logistics, so instead of Nico having to stand at a rental counter for ages, he was greeted in the car park.
I'm Sam from F42 Travel.
And presented with his keys. Now, I rented an Alfa Romeo Tonale through them, and it was a joyful experience, and I can tell you I rarely say that about car rental companies. The paperwork was all done previously. Sam messaged me as to where we should meet, and I was out of there in minutes. Now, if you're an event organiser or a large company needing lots of vehicles, get in contact with f42travel.co.uk. And bear in mind, they also have teams that specialise in ad hoc bookings and mini event hire. They do the bookings, the invoicing, the damage claims, and even handle traffic fines. So when it comes to ground transport, no one knows more about it than F42 Travel. And make sure you tell them that I sent you. Kevin Magnussen picked up a black Audi Q7 from F42 Travel, and both he and Nico took a different route to most of the other drivers. They went to the far swipe gates, where the walk from car to hospitality suite was about 25 metres along. On one day, Kevin did the long walk, and he was dressed here in casual kit, and that's something we don't often see from Kevin. Just harking back to Lando Norris, I asked him why he wasn't driving a McLaren. He said, I never drive McLarens here at this race. Well, I thought otherwise. In fact, I went back and checked, and indeed, last year, he drove this beautiful black 720S. Was Lando's teammate driving a McLaren? Unfortunately not, just a stock standard Alfa Romeo STELVIO. Here's one of the drivers that drove their own car, Alex Albon. And it's a gorgeous blue Mercedes E53. And how far is the drive from Monaco to Monza? It's in the order of 4 hours. Here's another driver to have a BMW, Logan Sargent, driving this 225e XDRIVE. This is a plug-in hybrid, does 0 to 100 in a stock standard 6.7 seconds, top speed 193 k's an hour, and this car has a petrol turbo engine and a battery, and it has a top speed of 193 kilometres an hour. Pierre Gasly is a traditional late arriver at the track, and I actually rarely get to see him these days, but he arrived with his girlfriend Kika on most days, driving this Renault Austral, which he has driven before, and the exact same car being driven by his teammate Esteban Ocon. Zhou Guanyu, well, he was driving the same car as I was, an Alfa Romeo Tonale. This is an entry-level Alfa Romeo. A nice car. I quite like driving mine, although it was quite sluggish, I thought, on the acceleration. Valtteri Bottas was the only driver I saw coming in on a bicycle. This was him coming in on the Saturday, passing his bike over the swipe gates and getting in. Oh, and by the way, I've got a video coming up shortly where I go through all of the drivers' mugshots. What photos they have on their swipe pass. You'll find it interesting, I promise you. Keep a lookout for that. I mentioned the Ferraris had police escorts. Well, so did both of the Mercedes drivers. Lewis Hamilton arrived in this gorgeous EQS 53. Now, on the Saturday, he arrived in late and had to go straight from this car to the people mover to go to the fan zone wearing this particular outfit. And it was quite a procedure with security making sure that he had that clean walk from car to car. George Russell, I didn't see him come in, but I'm told he was in the exact same car. Oh, actually, I've just realised I haven't done the Ferrari drivers yet. There were 3 teams with police escorts, Ferrari, Red Bull and Mercedes. So let's go to Carlos Sainz now in this SF90 Stradale. The red one for him, Charles was in a silver one. And on the Sunday, both of those cars came in behind a police escort, with Charles getting out and going signing some autographs before he went into the paddock. The day prior, Carlos arrived in his car with his mum. I had a chat with her afterwards and she was quite emotional about the journey in, saying she teared up a little bit seeing the enormous love for Carlos, and of course that love grew even more on Sunday when he scored that podium finish. And on Sunday I was positioned directly above the Ferrari garage to take this top-down shot of his pit stop on lap 19. This is a photo that's rarely available, and as such I'm doing a limited print run of 50 of them. You can buy one now at kimillman.com. You can select the number you want, 1 through to 50 from what's available, and you can even select the size, A2 or A3. Aston Martin drivers. Well, both of the drivers had Aston Martin DBXs. Lance Stroll drove in his, although Fernando's was being driven by his manager Alberto, while he and his trainer Eduardo arrived via scooter. They were staying in motorhomes along with the likes of Valtteri Bottas, Lewis Hamilton and a few others. And the final 2 F1 drivers to talk about are the AlphaTauri boys. Liam Lawson in a blue Honda Civic Type R, stock standard. And was Yuki driving a red one? Well, he was driving a red Honda, but it was his own NSX. He's driven this a number of times to Monza, and of course he doesn't have quite as long a trip as Alex Albon because he lives near the factory in Faenza. Oh, and which driver didn't drive their car to the track that normally does? Charles Leclerc. He didn't drive his black Ferrari. Instead, as we mentioned before, he was in an SF90. While that's the F1 drivers' cars, let me point out a couple of other amazing cars I saw in the car park. This gorgeous McLaren P1. This Huracan STO was driven by an Argentinian football manager. Emerson Fittipaldi in an EQS 53. Carlos Sainz Sr. in a Tonale. Fred Vasseur in a Stelvio Q4. Antonio Giovinazzi had his own car, this Stelvio. Jacques Villeneuve in an Audi. Bert Mailander in an AMG GT63S, and Mark Webber in his own Porsche Cayenne Turbo. Now you know what all of the F1 drivers, plus a whole host of other people, drove to the Italian Grand Prix at Monza. Now it's time for you to do something for me. Please hit the like button, and for the 50% of you or so that haven't subscribed, please do so now, because I'm producing 3 to 4 videos a week about F1 and travel. You'd love them all. For my digital images, go to prostarpics.com. For all of my photo books, signed prints, merchandise and wall art, kimillman.com. And for my best images live from the track and during the week, go to Instagram and search @KimIllman. Thanks for watching and stay passionate. Oh, somebody nearly had an accident there.